The wind slices through the narrow mountain gap, carrying dust, diesel fumes, and the low metallic growl of engines climbing toward the pass. Dawn light spills over the jagged ridgeline, revealing olive-drab shapes edging forward across the hard-packed earth. Inside one of them, a young American tank commander grips cold steel handles as his M4 Sherman shudders over rocks and shell holes. The engine roars behind him, loud enough to rattle his teeth. He smells oil, hot metal, Veer. Across the valley, German optics are already trained on the movement. In the Panzer IV hull down behind a low rise, Lieutenant Karl Weber adjusts his binoculars and exhales through his nose. "Shermans," he says flatly, passing the glasses to his gunner. "High silhouettes, thin armor. Easy targets." The gunner smirks. The loader chuckles. They have seen these American tanks before. Tall, boxy sloppy. Nothing like the low, sharp profile of German Panzers. In training briefings and frontline gossip alike, the verdict is the same. American tanks are mass-produced junk. Built by factories, not craftsmen. Designed by committees, not soldiers. Weber taps the side of the turret. "We will break them quickly," he says, "then move on." Below them, the Shermans advance in loose formation, tracks clanking, antennas whipping in the wind. Many of the crews are new. Some arrived in North Africa barely weeks earlier, rushed into combat after Operation Torch. Their uniforms are still stiff, their hands still clumsy with the routines of battle. They know the stories too. German tanks are better, German gunners deadlier, German commanders sharper, and yet orders are orders. They keep moving. The first German shot cracks across the pass like thunder. A Sherman at the front jerks violently as a 75mm round punches through its armor. Flame erupts from the turret ring. The tank grinds to a halt, smoke pouring upward in a thick black column. Another round follows, then another. From the ridge, Weber watches with professional satisfaction as two more Shermans are hit in quick succession. One throws a track and slew sideways. The other explodes outright, its turret hatch flipping open like a broken jaw. "See," the gunner says, "they burn easily." But the advance doesn't stop. Even as wrecks begin to litter the valley floor, more Shermans crest the rise behind them. Fresh tanks, same shape, same marking, same confident engine roar. They fan out, turrets traversing, guns searching for targets. Weber frowns. The Germans fire again. Another Sherman burns, then another. But the Americans return fire now, their 75mm guns barking back, shells slamming into the ridge. Rock fragments spray across the Panzer's glacis plate. The loader shouts. The radio crackles with reports from neighboring units. More Americans, always more. Down below, inside a surviving Sherman, the American commander forces himself to breathe. His headset buzzes with frantic voices. He can see the burning hulks of tanks that were beside him minutes ago. He can smell cordite. He can feel the heat from the engine bleeding into the turret. He also sees something else. Ahead, another Sherman takes a hit and stops moving. The crew bails out, scrambling into cover. Almost immediately, a replacement tank rolls forward from the rear, sliding into the same position, gun already swinging toward the ridge. It is as if the losses barely matter. This is not how German crews are used to fighting. In the Africa Corps, tanks are precious. Crews know their vehicles by sound and vibration, by the quirks of engines stressed by sand and heat. When a Panzer is knocked out, it is often gone for good, destroyed beyond repair, or abandoned for lack of parts, or cannibalized to keep others running. Every loss is felt, every disabled vehicle is a wound that doesn't heal easily. But the Americans keep coming. Weber lowers his binoculars slowly. The laughter from earlier has vanished. In its place is calculation, unease. They replace them too quickly, he mutters. His radio operator interrupts with a report from another unit farther south. More Shermans advancing, same pattern. Lose one, replace it. Press forward, again. And again, the German gunners are doing everything right. Their shots are accurate, their tactics sound. Yet the battlefield is filling with American tanks faster than they can be removed from it. For the first time, Weber feels something cold settle in his chest. Not fear of being hit, but the dawning realization that this enemy fights differently. Not with finesse, not with perfect machines, but with scale, with momentum, with an industrial heartbeat that does not slow, even when steel burns. As the sun climbs higher over Kasserine Pass, the laughter that once greeted the sight of the Sherman is gone, replaced by silence and by a question no German tanker wants to ask out loud. How many of them are there? The fighting at Kasserine Pass drags into the afternoon, the sun now high enough to turn the valley into an oven. Heat shimmers above the sand. Wrecked Shermans smolder where they fell, black smoke drifting lazily toward the mountains. German gunners wipe sweat from their eyes and reload again and again. Their movements efficient, drilled, exact. This is the kind of fight they were trained for. Inside his Panzer IV, Lieutenant Karl Weber listens to the rhythm of battle. Fired on impact. Reload, adjust. Fire again. Each shot is measured, each target chosen carefully. German doctrine prizes precision. Tanks are not thrown away. They are used deliberately like scalpels, and for hours it works. American tanks burn at the mouth of the pass. Infantry scatter. Radios crackle with reports of enemy units falling back. Weber allows himself a tight smile. This is what happens when amateurs challenge professionals. But then, the reports change. A neighboring Panzer unit radios in from the north. They are low on ammunition. Another reports mechanical trouble. Sand-clogged filters, overheating engines. A third reports casualties among experienced crews. Not catastrophic losses, but losses all the same. Weber switches frequencies, listening everywhere. The same pattern emerges. The Germans are winning tactically, but the fight refuses to end. And still, more Shermans arrive. By late afternoon, American tanks are no longer advancing blindly. They are learning. They hang back just beyond effective German range, using terrain folds, hull-down positions. Artillery begins to fall, American artillery, plentiful and responsive. Explosions walk across German positions, forcing panzers to reposition, to expose themselves, to move. A Sherman crests a ridge at speed, fires once, and drops back out of sight. The round glances off Weber's turret with a screech of steel. No penetration, but it is close enough to matter. The gunner looks at Weber. They're adjusting. Weber nods. He doesn't answer. His eyes are fixed on the valley floor, where recovery vehicles, American recovery vehicles, are already towing disabled Shermans out of the line. Not burned-out wrecks, disabled machines, track damage, engine-troubled tanks that will fight again. German recovery vehicles are nowhere to be seen. There is no fuel to spare, no time, no air superiority to protect them. Every panzer knocked out here will stay knocked out. As evening approaches, Weber receives new orders. Pull back, consolidate. Preserve combat power, preserve. It is a word he rarely hears at the tactical level. The withdrawal is controlled but tense. Panzers reverse carefully, smoke rounds popping to conceal movement. As Weber's tank backs away, he takes one last look through his optics at the American line. There are more Shermans now than there were in the morning. That night the Germans count losses. Tanks destroyed, tanks disabled, crews killed or wounded, experienced men gone, men who cannot be replaced quickly, no matter how well trained the replacements may be. Across the lines, American units do their own accounting. The numbers are grim. Dozens of Shermans lost, crews shaken, commanders frustrated by early mistakes. But then the trucks arrive. Flatbeds roll in under blackout conditions, headlights masked. Fresh Shermans are unloaded, ammunition crates stacked, fuel drums tapped, mechanics swarm damaged vehicles, swapping engines, replacing tracks, hammering steel back into shape. A tank knocked out in the morning is fighting again 2 days later. Sometimes sooner, an American supply officer checks his clipboard and whistles softly. The numbers are absurd. More tanks than expected, more fuel than planned, more spare parts than anyone at the front imagined possible. Back at German headquarters, intelligence officers study captured documents and aerial photographs. They note the density of American logistics, the endless columns of trucks, the standardized shapes of vehicles, identical parts, interchangeable across units. One officer circles a figure on a report with his pencil. Production estimates at monthly output. He shakes his head. On the front line, Weber cleans dust from his binocular lenses and listens to the distant rumble of engines, American engines, somewhere beyond the hills. He thinks of his Panzer, already overdue for maintenance, of the worn road wheels, of the thinning supply of spare parts. He remembers how his crew laughed that morning. "They burn easily," the gunner had said. They still do. Weber knows that. A Sherman hit in the right place will always burn. But burning, he realizes, is not the same as stopping. The Americans are not trying to win by preserving tanks. They are trying to win by replacing them, over and over, faster than the enemy can adapt. In the days that follow, the pattern repeats across Tunisia. Tactical victories blur into strategic stalemates. German units fight well, skillfully, courageously, and yet each engagement leaves them weaker than before. The Americans absorb losses, adjust tactics, and return with more steel than last time. The Sherman becomes a familiar sight, then an unwelcome one, then a dreaded constant. Not because it is perfect, but because it never seems to go away. By March 1943, the fighting in Tunisia has taken on a strange, grinding rhythm. Battles erupt, burn hot, and then dissolve. Not because one side has been destroyed, but because one side has simply run out of something the other still possesses in abundance. Time fuel. Steel. Lieutenant Karl Weber notices it first in the small details. The way his driver nurses the engine now, coaxing performance from worn components. The way the loader hesitates before firing, conscious that every shell matters. The way maintenance checks stretch longer. Mechanics improvising repairs that should have been done with factory-fresh parts that will never arrive. Across the lines, the Americans are fighting a different war entirely. At an American forward depot near Tebessa, rows of Shermans sit nose to tail like cattle awaiting branding. Their paint is fresh, their engines unbroken in. Crews move among them with a confidence that borders on casual. A tank commander jokes as he climbs into a vehicle that arrived from the port less than a week ago. He has already lost one Sherman in combat. He does not expect to keep this one forever either. That understanding, unspoken but universal, shapes everything about how the Americans fight. They do not treat their tanks as irreplaceable. They treat them as tools. Tools meant to be used hard, broken, and swapped out without ceremony. This philosophy shocks German observers. Captured American manuals circulate among Axis intelligence officers. They describe maintenance schedules, crew rotation, standardized repairs. The language is impersonal, efficient, entirely devoid of sentiment. A Sherman is not a prized machine. It is a unit of output. Weber hears rumors from fellow officers returning from briefings. American factories are producing tanks by the thousands. Not just Shermans, but trucks, half-tracks, artillery pieces, aircraft. All built to standard patterns, all designed so that parts fit no matter where they come from. Germany, by contrast, is fielding increasingly sophisticated machines that require increasingly careful care. New models are introduced even as older ones remain in service. Variants multiply, spare parts do not. On paper, German tanks remain superior in armor and firepower. In practice, many never reach the battlefield at all. In one engagement near El Guetar, Weber's unit ambushes an American armored column at dawn. The shooting is brutal and short. Several Shermans are destroyed. American infantry retreats under fire. It is a textbook success. By afternoon, American artillery pounds the German positions. Fighter bombers arrive overhead, screaming down to strafe and bomb. Weber's Panzer is shaken by near misses. Shrapnel scars the turret. By evening, fresh Shermans appear again. Weber stares through his binoculars, counting. He stops when he realizes the number exceeds what his unit faced that morning. Later that night, he sits on the hull of his tank, helmet beside him, smoking in silence. He thinks about the nature of victory, about how many battles can be won before the war itself slips away. Nearby, a junior officer mutters, "It's like fighting a factory." The phrase sticks because that is exactly what it feels like. The Americans are not just deploying tanks. They are deploying an entire industrial system into combat. Ports feed railways, railways feed depots, depots feed frontline units. Every loss triggers a replacement order that ripples backward across the Atlantic. to assembly lines that never sleep. Back in the United States, workers on those lines will never hear Weber's name. They will never see Tunisia. They will not smell burning oil or hear the crack of 75-meter guns. But their output shapes every moment of his war. A tank destroyed at Kasserine is replaced by one built in Detroit. A broken engine in the desert is swapped with one assembled in Ohio. The cycle continues, indifferent to skill, courage, or tradition. By late March, German commanders begin to speak openly about conservation. Avoid unnecessary engagements, preserve armor, delay, withdraw when possible. These are not the words of an army accustomed to attacking. When Weber receives orders to pull back yet again, he does not argue. He understands now, each fight costs him something he cannot replace. Each American defeat costs them time, and time they seem to have in endless supply. The Sherman, once mocked for its height and thin armor, becomes a symbol of something larger, a moving piece of an industrial tide. Crude, perhaps, vulnerable, certainly, but unstoppable in its accumulation. Weber watches another American column advance at dusk, their silhouettes stark against the setting sun. He no longer laughs, he no longer underestimates. He calculates, and for the first time, the calculation does not favor him. April arrives in Tunisia with heat and dust and a quiet sense of inevitability. The German positions shrink day by day, compressed against the coast as Allied pressure tightens from every direction. For Lieutenant Karl Weber and his crew, the war has become a matter of endurance rather than initiative. They still fight well, but they fight tired. Weber's Panzer IV has survived more engagements than most. Its paint is scarred, its suspension worn, its engine temperamental. Each morning begins with coaxing it awake. Each night ends with hoping it will still run tomorrow. Across the front, American armored units rotate out of the line with clockwork regularity. Fresh crews replace exhausted ones. Tanks are swapped, refueled, rearmed. The system does not depend on heroics. It depends on process. Weber encounters the results of that process during a dawn clash near a dried riverbed west of Enfidaville. The Germans ambush an American spearhead as it moves through the shallow wadi. The first Sherman is hit and bursts into flame. The second is immobilized. The third reverses under fire. For a moment it feels familiar, comfortable. Then American artillery opens up almost instantly, shells crashing down with practiced precision. Smoke blooms across the battlefield. Under its cover, more Shermans appear, rolling forward into the same kill zone their predecessors just vacated. Weber's gunner fires until the barrel smokes. The loader's hands blister from hot casings. The radio crackles with orders and half-heard warnings. Another Panzer to the left takes a hit. The crew bails out, one man limping badly. The tank burns. No recovery vehicle comes. By midday, Weber's unit is ordered to disengage again. As they withdraw, Weber looks back and sees American engineers already at work. Bulldozers level the wadi crossings. Recovery vehicles tow disabled Shermans away. Fuel trucks line up behind the armor, hoses unspooling like veins feeding muscle. This is not chaos, it is choreography. Later that day, during a rare lull, Weber listens to an intelligence briefing. The numbers are worse than he imagined. American tank production now exceeds German output several times over. Even losses that would cripple another army barely slow the Allied advance. One officer speaks the words no one wants to hear. We cannot destroy them faster than they can replace themselves. It is not a complaint. It is a statement of fact. Weber thinks back to earlier in the war. France, the early victories, the confidence that speed and skill could overcome any enemy. He remembers how German tanks once appeared suddenly, decisively, ending battles before they could truly begin. Now the Americans do not seek decisive engagements. They seek pressure, relentless, accumulating pressure. Each attack forces a response. Each response costs the Germans something irreplaceable. A veteran sergeant puts it more bluntly over a shared canteen. They don't care if they lose 10 tanks, he says. They care if one gets through. By May, the outcome in North Africa is no longer in doubt. Axis forces are surrounded, exhausted, and starved of supplies. Tanks that once represented German technical mastery now sit idle for lack of fuel. Crews sabotage their own vehicles to prevent capture. Weber stands beside his Panzer one final time, placing a charge inside the engine compartment. He hesitates before setting the fuse, resting a hand on the warm steel. This tank has been his world, his protection, his weapon. Across the valley, American Shermans idle in neat rows, engines humming, crews waiting patiently for orders that will come. When Weber detonates the charge and walks away, he does so without bitterness, only clarity. He understands now what the Sherman truly represents. Not a superior machine, not an inferior one, a philosophy, a belief that wars are not won by perfect weapons, but by systems that endure losses and keep moving forward. As he marches into captivity days later, Weber watches American columns roll past, endless, identical, replaceable. The tall silhouettes no longer seem laughable. They seem inevitable. The war does not end for Lieutenant Karl Weber when Tunisia falls. It simply changes shape. He becomes a prisoner in May 1943, disarmed, exhausted, marched past rows of American Shermans bearing fresh white stars. Many of them look new, too new. Their paint unscuffed, their tracks barely worn. The contrast with the burned-out hulks scattered across the hills is jarring. Weber is transported first to a temporary holding camp in North Africa, then placed aboard a ship bound west. Weeks later, he finds himself standing on a dock he never imagined he would see, an American port. Cranes swing overhead, trucks rumble endlessly. The air smells of oil, salt, and industry. There are no ruins here, no shortages, no bomb craters patched with rubble. On the train inland, Weber watches factories slide past the windows. Entire towns seem built around them. Smoke rises not from destruction, but from production. Day after day, night after night. At the POW camp, the shock deepens. The food is plentiful, the barracks solid, medical care routine. But what unsettles Weber most is the casual abundance. Trucks arrive on schedule. Supplies are logged, stored, distributed with impersonal efficiency. The guards complain about paperwork, not shortages. One afternoon, Weber and several other captured officers are shown a newsreel as part of a re-education program. The screen flickers to life, and suddenly he is watching something far more devastating than artillery. Assembly lines, Shermans roll forward on conveyors. Turrets are lowered into place by cranes. Engines are bolted in by teams that move with practiced rhythm. Completed tanks drive out the far end of the factory under their own power. The numbers appear on screen, hundreds per month, then more still. A murmur ripples through the room. Weber feels the same cold understanding he felt at Kasserine, now sharpened by distance and perspective. The Sherman was never meant to be unbeatable. It was meant to be replaceable. Loss was assumed, damage expected, continuity guaranteed. Back in Tunisia, he had fought the tanks in front of him. Here he sees what was behind them. Other German POWs share similar realizations. Luftwaffe pilots who once mocked American aircraft quality now see hangars full of replacements. U-boat officers study shipyards where freighters are launched in days, not months. Artillerymen learn how shells are produced by the millions. The pattern is universal. The Americans did not gamble on winning individual engagements. They invested in ensuring they could lose them and continue anyway. Years later, long after the war ends, Weber will explain this to a young historian interviewing him in a quiet German town. "We thought quality would defeat quantity," he says. "We believed superior weapons would decide everything." He pauses, searching for the right words. But we were not fighting weapons. We were fighting an economy. The Sherman, once laughed at for its height and thin armor, becomes in hindsight one of the most honest machines of the war. It did not pretend to be invincible. It accepted its own destruction as part of a larger design. On the battlefield, that design looked like columns that never ended. For the German tank crews who faced it in North Africa, the laughter died quickly, replaced by respect, then by resignation. Because no matter how many Shermans burned, another always seemed to appear in the smoke, engine running, turret turning, ready to take its place. And in that relentless return, the outcome of the war was already written.